All right, going live here on Saturday. I am doing these lives during the winter here just because I'm trying to test out some new ways of putting some videos together, new microphones, just new things in general. So I'm also checking out some feeds and things like that because I just am not sure how well a lot of this stuff's working. I mean, I did a couple weeks ago and come to realize it never even went on, and I still don't even know what happened with that. So I'm doing a few things here today. I am just doing it live just because that's just what I seem to be doing these days. I got my mower here. I need to put my jacket on because it's a little chilly out. So some of you may know, some of you may not. I live in Western Washington, and it's been really, really rainy. I'm sure everybody's seen that on the news. We got some flooding going on in the areas where the rivers are and stuff like that. That's not me. I'm in a part of Western Washington where I'm not really above grade because I do live kind of on the Sound. But I'm not in any area where we're underwater or anything like that. So I need to do a few things here to get my mower ready before we go. So I'm just going to kind of go through the motions here. It shouldn't take too terribly long. I titled my live the way I did. The only reason why is because I'm putting together a video right now to talk about just a lot of things. I feel like I was a victim. I didn't think I was a victim when it was happening to me, but I looked at the way I was getting information on YouTube as I just was being lied to. So I started doing a lot of research, and one of the things that really drives me nuts nowadays when I watch YouTube, knowing what I know, listening to soil scientists, doctors, people who are really, educated in soil science, and watching these conferences, these discussions, just all these different things, talks on research and research papers that, a lot of these people do. I've just come to learn, a lot of surprising things that the reality is, I've had yards and grass for 30, 40 years, whatever. I mean, since I was a little kid, I was taking care of lawns. And, I always thought I was doing it right, but then I go into this whole thing, where I want to change my lawn. I want to start doing things a little differently. And so I got onto this YouTube, and I everything I do for the last, I don't know, how long YouTube's been out, but whenever I have a problem or I need to fix something, or I'm going to do something, like in the kitchen or installing windows or replacing something in the bathroom, I always, some sort of plumbing, some sort of electrical, all these just different things. I would, watch some YouTube videos just to get an idea of, how professionals are doing it. And, you take that word with a grain of salt whenever you watch YouTube, of course, because YouTube has a lot of people that just don't know what they're talking about. And that's what I found out in lawn care. A lot of these big name lawn care channels, and I have a point, trust me. A lot of these big name lawn care channels, Lawn Ginger, Ron Henry, the Lawn Care Nut, Yard Bra, all these, guys that have, hundreds of thousands of followers, and, people, subscribing to their channels and listening to them and believing everything that they say, or maybe they don't believe everything they say. Maybe they do. I don't know. You know, I'm just adjusting my bed knife right now. I felt it was a little loose, so I'm just kind of tightening it a little bit. You know, I'm probably going to find out once I get this done it's going to be too tight, but whatever. Anyways, so I fell into that trap of, you know, watching these lawn care channels and starting to, you know, be a follower and be a victim and listening to what they were saying. And I didn't realize that a lot of what they were saying was, you know, a bunch of BS. I took it for what, you know, they said, that they knew what they were talking about, that they, you know, knew all the science behind what they were saying. And come to find out, these guys, like the Lawn Care Net, I think he's been doing lawn care videos for the longest. I'm not really sure. I really don't care. But this guy is the biggest con artist, the biggest scammer there is out there, and he basically is stealing your money from you. You know, with the product, the things he tells you to do. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't know what he's talking about, because he knows stuff about, you know, especially Bermuda grass and you know, warm season grasses and things like that. That's where he lives. That's what he does. And he knows things about, you know, this stuff. But a lot of this stuff that these guys tell you and the products they tell you to buy, and buy them from me, everything from lawn care nutrients to, oh, I gotta turn this on, I guess. You know, lawn care nutrients, soil testing, you know, weed killers, disease control. Sorry, I guess I can't chew gum and walk at the same time. You know, all these things, you know, some of the stuff they talk about, they know what they're talking about. And other things, they just don't have any, they tell you stuff that, I don't know, I guess they believe it, but the reality is it's not true. And the video from different sources, from these different conferences that I've been watching, discussions, researchers discussing research papers and the outcomes and the conclusions. And I'm not going to get to it so much in this video right here, because I'm just doing a live. I'm probably covering up my microphone with my jacket, and you probably can't even hear what I'm saying. But, you know, soil testing. I'm going to talk to you about the ways that the soil tests you're using are worthless. And you know, I started believing that soil testing was really, really important. You know, I do soil testing. Only to, sorry, I'm having a little trouble here because this is getting caught on the bolt down here. And you know, I only do soil testing now as a comparison to, and oh, why is this thing not going on? What the heck's going on? You know, comparison to different types of testing and things like that. I have never done anything, changed anything based on a soil test result. I have never done anything. Now, soil testing for pH, different story. I make changes on soil tests for pH, and I don't go like hardcore into making changes as far as, oh, I see what the problem is. I gotta put this on. I gotta lift this up. I make changes as far as, that brings me to a point right away. Calcium. Calcium doesn't do anything to lower the pH of your soil. Gypsum, you know, that's one of the big things that a lot of these lawn care guys talk about, is how these sorts of things, what they do and, changing the pH of your soil. Now lime, yeah, of course, it definitely slowly will increase your pH, but sulfur is definitely a way to lower your soil pH. But listening to these guys talk about calcium and gypsum and things like that, sulfate even, a lot of people think sulfate because sulfate is a form of sulfur, it lowers your pH, and it doesn't. And these are the kinds of things, back when I first started watching, I thought I was learning. I was just like, oh my God, I'm watching Yard Bra. I like Yard Bra. And this guy's the biggest fraud out there. He's got his own fertilizer line now, which is the biggest scam of all. And it's one of the things I'm going to talk about because, one of the big things about right now, this time of season, people are talking about is winterization. Why you need to winterize. And it's just a big scam. And I'm going to get into a lot of that information as to why you don't need to winterize your lawn. And by doing it, you're not really helping your lawn. In most cases, you're probably hurting your lawn. And, that's the other thing. These guys talk to you about, oh, you've got to do your disease control management. I don't even know what the name of it is now. Azoxy whatever. I don't use it, but that's my point, is that if your soil is optimized with the right nutrients, you're not going to need to add these things. I'm going to jump backwards a little bit. I have so many things that I've been building up on my mind. I'm kind of scatterbrained, the whole thing. I need to sit down and I need to think about it and think about what format to put it in to make it all make sense. Because, these lawn care guys, soil testing, you got to add your phosphorus, you got to do triple 13, you got to add potassium for the winter because the winter it's going to help your soil, your grass, from the cold and help it from, getting disease, or not getting disease, but help it from getting damaged, stressed out, and all these sorts of things. And if you have a full gas tank, do you add more gas to it? What happens when you add more gas to it? Your tank just starts overflowing. Same thing with your soil. When your soil has phosphorus and potassium already in it, by adding more, you're doing nothing to help it. More phosphorus, more potassium doesn't help your soil, doesn't help your grass, doesn't help any of that stuff. If it's got it, great. If it doesn't, add it. I'm going to go over, ways of seeing if you have a phosphorus deficiency or if you have a potassium deficiency. I mean, the biggest thing is if you have a phosphorus deficiency, you're going to start seeing some purple veining in your grass. Potassium is a little bit different and it's a little harder to identify, but it's the easiest way to discuss potassium and a lack of potassium, and where you would want to do a soil test is if you're seeing, your grass getting brown, and you've done all these stupid things because people have told you, oh, your grass is getting brown, you need more nitrogen. There's a lot of reasons your grass can turn brown. And doing a soil test is one of the last things you do, because you need to check, you need to make sure, do I have disease? Do I have lack of water? Is there enough light going on? Are there other things going on? Do I have grubs? Are grubs eating my roots and causing my grass to turn brown? My neighbor over here, he's got a grub problem again. I'm working on taking care of that. But that's what I showed him. I went out there and I showed him, I said, see, look at these areas of your lawn, they're turning brown. You got grubs that are eating your roots and the grass is turning brown. And then look here, you got raccoons coming in, they're tearing up your grass because they're going after the grubs. So now you got these big tear up spots in your yard. And it's not a lot, so it's not a really bad problem that he has right now, but he's starting to have it, so we're going to work on that. But like I'm saying, you know, as far as identifying problems, the last thing you're probably going to have a problem with in your yard is nutrients. And it should be the very last thing that you look at. And there are ways you can determine if you have a nutrient problem. The biggest thing about nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, you know, being your macronutrients, they're mobile nutrients, which means your plant steals from the oldest, weakest parts of the plant to give to new growth those nutrients, N, P, and K. So if you're lacking in phosphorus, the reason why you're going to start getting purple veining is because your plant is stealing that phosphorus in that part of the plant, the older part of the plant, and it's giving it to the newer part of the plant for more growth, because the plant really just wants to grow. And it's basically saying to the old people, to the old parts, you know, we'll call them people, whatever, hey, you know, you're on the other side of your life cycle. I need some of the nutrients that you're using to give to my good new friends over here that are moving in, and I want to help them grow to get this grass growing. So on the phosphorus and the potassium side, that's where you're going to start seeing your problems arise with nutrient deficiencies. The older parts of your grass are going to be showing signs of deficiency, and the newer parts of your grass are going to still grow. So you have to look at it. But while you get down in there and you look at it, hey, maybe you're going to find out and you're going to see, oh, I don't have a phosphorus problem because I don't have purple veining. But I notice I have, you know, some spores, you know, some fungus going on down here on the leaf blades. Oh, I got a disease problem. You know, and you can identify disease by that, by, you know, using a microscope, digital, you know, type microscope that you can hook up to your phone or your computer. They're like, you know, $20. I have one, and it's just a way to look at, you know, your grass blades, and you can look at it and see if they have some sort of disease. You know, certain diseases are really easy to see and visualize. Other diseases are a lot harder to identify. But, you know, if you got the red thread, you know, you're going to see that. It's got something that looks like a red thread running through your yard. If you got gray snow mold, you're going to see, you know, a fuzzy type white, you know, spore growing on your plant. And if you have, you know, what is it, brown patch? I believe it was brown patch. I just started learning about all these diseases. I don't really have a disease problem, but I also don't over-fertilize. So if you have brown patch, same thing, you're going to start seeing the spores and things like that on your leaf blade. Anyways, we'll move on from that because I'm going to get into a lot more detail in the video that I'm working on that. But I'm trying to just kind of steer you in the direction of what's going on with your grass, how some of these things are working. And then before I get to mowing, because I'm going to go ahead and do a mow here, it's nice and dry. Sun just finally came out. It's almost 1:30 now. Yeah, I need to get to mowing anyways. The shadows are coming out. But the sun just came out 30 minutes ago. And I did the dew whip on my lawn earlier this morning to try to help it dry a little bit faster because there was just large droplets of dew all over my putting green, all over my grass. So I used the dew whip on it, knocked it all down, tried to get it so the grass is going to dry out because I haven't mowed for like 3 weeks and I miss mowing. I'm going to mow my yard. I'm going to mow my neighbor's yard today. So the last point I want to talk about the soil testing, other than the resin exchange based, you know, the My Soil test, the lawn mastery test, those are all the same. Anything where you are basically taking a soil sample and putting into a jar of liquid that has a little resin pouch in it, any of those types of soil tests, absolutely worthless. I'm going to get into why and the information that these tests are giving you and how inaccurate they are. Because first of all, measuring nitrogen is not impossible. There aren't really any tests to measure the amount of nitrogen in your soil. There's a very good reason why, and this is another thing I'm working on in this video, talking about why nitrogen is so hard to measure, why the information that these soil tests, soil kit and the Lawn Mastery and all those resin exchange based soil tests are basically invalid, fraudulent, and the information they're giving you on them are basically very inaccurate, and they aren't something you should go by. Nitrogen is always changes forms from nitrates to ammonium and those sorts of things in your soil, and based on the microbial activity, the wetness or dryness of the soil, the nitrogen will actually vaporize out of your soil. All these sorts of things. I'm going to get into great detail on why this is happening, how this is happening, and why you constantly have to add nitrogen, and how nitrogen is helping your grass, and is the most important thing to growing. I've talked about nitrogen and its necessity to make it so the P and the K are, taken up by the plant. Without nitrogen, the plant's not able to uptake phosphorus or potassium, or is less likely. The plant has its own ability to uptake nutrients through microbes and enzymes and that sort of thing through the root tips, but it needs help. It needs certain things to assist it in, taking up those nutrients that are soluble in the soil. Well, first of all, maybe it's not soluble, it needs to become soluble. Well, the plant has an ability to solubilize these different nutrients. And this is really in-depth and in detail type of information, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to help you understand, maybe in too technical of terms, but understanding how your turf grass works and why you're a victim and you're being lied to and you're being sold snake oil, which, funny enough, Yard Bra is selling a product that says snake oil. He basically is telling you straight up, I'm giving you snake oil. Snake oil being, back in the day, snake oil was something that, people would buy thinking that it was going to help them and improve some sort of ailment in their body, and it actually did nothing at all. And it didn't do, these things that they were claiming that it would do for your body. That's basically the same thing Yard Bra's doing. He thinks he's selling it to you as some sort of cute little name to his product and that sort of thing, but snake oil, the products that he's selling you are basically just that. They're all snake oil. They're probably not needed. If you're using them, they're probably giving your grass more chance and likelihood of diseases and problems and those sorts of things. So, I've been off, I've been watching a lot of videos, discussions, and reading a lot of papers, going through some research and things like that, because that have their lawn care channels that they think they know what they're talking about, they're new, and just because they've heard from somebody else talk about winterizing your lawn, they think it's important too because of potassium and all that sort of stuff. And so it's just a never-ending cycle that once one guy learns it from a guy who doesn't know what he's talking about, then he starts talking about it, then the next guy starts talking about it, and then the next guy starts talking about it, and so on and so on and so on. And by the time you know, you've got 100,000 different lawn care channels on YouTube. They're all talking about why you need to add a 10, 0, 10, or whatever they're telling you to add, nitrogen and phosphorus or potassium, and why it's important. They don't know what they're talking about. I mean, this whole scam started from an actual fertilizer company. I'm not going to mention the name of it, but it was basically developed out of a sales meeting by a large fertilizer company. You probably have their fertilizer products in your garage, or you are probably using one of their fertilizer tools like a spreader or something like that. Very large company. In a sales meeting, they were trying to come up with ways to, sell more fertilizer, especially in the wintertime. In the wintertime, nobody puts fertilizer on their lawn because nobody needs to put fertilizer on their lawn. And they came up with this great winterization formula containing nitrogen and potassium, because potassium is supposed to help you from, heat damage and heat stress, and, it's supposed to prevent, help prevent damage to your lawn and things like that. So this was born. this whole scam of potassium being needed in your lawn for winterization. Biggest scam of all time. And now the largest YouTube channels on YouTube are going after this, telling you how you have to do this. And they're telling you why you have to do this. And they basically give you all the same information that, yes, potassium, it does help heat stress. But you know what? The potassium doesn't help heat stress because you're adding the potassium, because that's not how that works. The potassium is helping heat stress because when the plant starts going into heat stress, it creates an enzyme to help uptake the potassium and add the proper enzymes into your turf grass to help protect it from that heat stress. Okay? So only having potassium solubilized, or the ability to be solubilized by the plant, key words, solubilized. A lot of people will tell you available. You know, that's not how it works. The nutrient has to be soluble in your soil for your plant to be able to uptake it, take it in, for the plant to do its thing through the roots and uptake that nutrient into being used by the plant to create the enzymes the plant needs to have to, you know, help against the disease or the heat stress or the different stresses that it's going through. You know, that's what it needs to do. Okay. So my last part I was talking about on this was the soil testing. Research over, you know, kind of, you know, putting all 4 of these different topics I'm trying to very poorly explain to you in a quick live video. The last part of the research I was doing was on soil testing, and it was on soil testing and how your soil is storing is a really bad word, but I'm going to use it, storing the nutrients, okay, because basically the soil doesn't store nutrients, okay. It has the ability to hold unsoluble nutrients like potassium and phosphorus, but those nutrients can be solubilized by the plant or by the enzymes in the soil or the microbes in the soil. Those nutrients can be solubilized so that the plant can take it up. So it kind of does sit there in a state of, call it unsolubility. The plant isn't able to take it up, but it is there in the soil and can be solubilized so the plant can take it up, okay? Because if any nutrient is not soluble within the soil, the plant can't take it, can't absorb it. So it can't do anything with it. So what this research that I was reading on, they were talking about soil testing, you know, in fall, winter, spring, and summer. And there's a a continuous cycle of your soil's ability to have within it the soluble nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And what they found is as the growing season starts in the spring, those nutrients are definitely being used. They're being solubilized and being uptaken by the plant because the plant is actively growing, and so with nitrogen it's taking up phosphorus, it's taking up potassium, and it's doing it in its, you know, proper ratio, 4:1:2. You know, it's the ratio that the nutrients are taken up in. And so as you go through the summer and you get down into the fall, well, in the fall what happens? The leaves start falling off the trees, they start getting into the ground, you start getting more organic material in your ground, phosphorus and the potassium in your soil. And what happens is the cycle starts over again in your soil. The phosphorus and the potassium starts building up naturally in your soil and being unsoluble, but still within the soil, but the plant doesn't have the ability to take it up because if it doesn't need it, it's not solubilizing that nutrient to take it up because it's wintertime and it doesn't need it. But what's going to happen is it's going to be there and it's going to be available to be solubilized in the spring the next year. And the cycle, they found, just consistently happens over and over and over again, where It's going to take up phosphorus and potassium along with the nitrogen, but the nitrogen is a lot different because it vaporizes. It changed within the soil into nitrates and ammonium, and it's ever changing, and it will vaporize out of your soil with heat and dryness and stuff like that. So that's why nitrogen is always depleting, and that's why you have this need to add nitrogen. And this is where the whole spoon feeding thing comes into. And the addition of adding nitrogen, once a month in, small doses and things like that is a great idea, because the nitrogen is going to be used by the plant, but it's also going to take up the phosphorus and the potassium that it needs to continue developing, to continue growth, continue root growth, and all those sorts of things. And the need for actually adding any kind of phosphorus or potassium to your soil is pretty much zero. And what this testing found is that, first of all, soil testing is probably, it basically costs you 300 to 700% more. You spend that much more in nutrients per year based on soil testing, because you're doing something that a company is telling you to try to sell you a product that they know is not going to necessarily hurt your lawn, but they also know it's not really going to necessarily help your lawn. But they're in it to make money, companies and soil test companies, nutrient companies, and all that sort of stuff. So they're selling you a product that you don't really need. And what they found is that you're spending 300 to 700% more money per year over a nitrogen-based nutrient plan. That's what I'm basically using. I use only nitrogen. I don't use any other nutrient. Nitrogen and iron. It's the only things I use to green my lawn and to help it grow. And I have lots of phosphorus and lots of potassium in my soil, and I don't add it. But there are ways that I do add it that, I didn't realize, because I hadn't done the research on it. But when I do the composting to my yard, I'm adding phosphorus and potassium because that's what composting is. It puts organic material back in your soil, and through the organic material, the microbes in the soil start producing phosphorus and potassium, and then the plant starts solubilizing it, and then it's there and it can take it up and all that good stuff, and the nitrogen's there, the sulfur's there to help the nitrogen, and there's just this whole, combination of things going on in your yard to make your grass grow and grow green and thick. So that's what I'm working on. I probably did a really poor job of, explaining it to you, because I'm sitting here on a live video just antsy to go mow my lawn. So I should probably just go do that. I should probably just go mow my lawn and get on with this. So, sorry for all the hand gestures. I guess I speak with my hands too much. I'm going to do my drone today because I haven't flown my drone in a while. The sun's out. So I decided to charge my drone batteries and throw my drone up in the air. And I'm going to do some recording of the neighbors' yards and things like that later on today, because I got Doug's yard across the street looking really good. His grass is looking really green. He's basically... Let me see if I can put the camera over there. I don't know how well you'll be able to see it. And then I also have Kathy. She's running the same Kentucky bluegrass that I'm running, and they're cutting it at a higher height of cut. Yeah, I see already. You can't really see that over there. So I'll try to show you here in just a second. Let me turn some things on here. And like I said, I just do live just to do it. I don't really have any sorry, I'm having troubles doing two things at once, like always. I am trying to come up with some things for next season.